Well, welcome back, high school hockey fans, to another edition of This Week in Wisconsin Prep Hockey. I'm Mike Hammett, along with my panel of Bergs, Bill Senior, Bill Junior, and we got a special guest tonight, Brian Brandt, the head coach of Wausau West, who is the present Wisconsin Hockey Coaches Association. Are you president?
I am. Yes,
You are president.
I've tried getting rid of this thing for 2 years, but
Do
here
you
I
have
am
your
still.
Little did you
Did you-
realize it's like a Supreme Court appointment. You're stuck there forever.
it's yeah, I think this is year 5. So
did you have your inauguration ball today?
I did not have the inauguration ball. No, I did not. Wasn't in the budget this year.
So the big change this year in boys hockey is competitive balance points are now in effect. So I believe Springs, New Richmond, and Oregon are all up at D1 this year on points. I think New Richmond may have moved up anyway on enrollment because some other schools dropped down this year, Ashland and Shawano. But what is how much input did the coaches have in that before the WIAA board voted on it, or do you have any say over it at all?
We had zero input on it. We had zero say on it. I don't know that our sport was one that maybe they were looking to use it for. I think there were some other sports that they were using it for, and I think they blanketed it across all sports. I mean, it's one of those things where it's a rolling 3-year window, and it'll be interesting to see the impact it has. I mean, obviously, this is the first year it's had impact on it. But like you said, depending on how teams are doing and what the future looks like, they do have the option to petition to stay or move depending on what that rolling 3-year window looks like for them.
One of the big things I noticed is that for years, as a private school in Fond du Lac, people have been saying Springs should have opted up into D1 like Edgewood and University School did. And now their first year back at D1, they're currently ranked 4th in the state, which might lend credence to that. But on the other hand, you look at what Tomahawk did last year, what they're poised to do this year. Tomahawk could be, pushed up to Division 1, and by enrollment, Tomahawk is the second smallest hockey program in the WIAA, with only previously mentioned Springs being smaller. And I don't know that moving up Tomahawk is really the intent of competitive balance. I mean, that seems a little backwards to me.
Yeah, I mean, I think some of that stuff will play out, and I'm sure there's other sports that have similar stories where, it's just for us, it's either D2 or D1. In other sports, you go from 4 to 3. What difference does that have for you? You saw some of the football teams make it to level 4 that had moved up, or make it even to the championship have moved up. So clearly they, are a really good program and doing really well. So it'll be interesting to see in this the 1 and 2 division sports, the small number of divisions, to see what impact it has, because those are the things we looked at too, in terms of what effect is this going to have on our sport. I mean, you look at it, Tomahawks had a really good, 2-3 year window that would put them in that window to move up. But then I think as that happens to different programs, I think they need to work with the WIA to make sure that that's going to be a good fit for them. Because if you have a great group of kids that come through, and then you don't have a great group behind them, that's going to be a little bit unfair to that next group because of all the success of the previous group.
Well, that's usually how it is with the smaller schools. You get one group of kids, and it only, for the smaller schools, it only takes like 4 or 5 kids, over a 2 or 3 year age group, and you've got a good program, and you can make some noise. Like I've seen Tomahawk play a couple of times, and they basically, they have 2 lines, which is fine for Division 2. They have a 3rd line they can throw out there every once in a while, to give the other guys a break. But when they're going against, if they're going against D1 schools that are, rolling 3 or 4 lines, they're going to get worn down.
Yeah, and I think that's part of what they're going to have to look at. And I think each school in admin, they can petition with evidence and some of those things if they were to get moved up to stay where they're at. And I think, that whole process is probably new too, and we'll see what the WIA does with it.
I mean,
I
hockey's
think
nice
what
in that you can say, look, 75% of our scoring is graduating this year, and they're taking our goalie with them, that kind of thing.
Yeah, yeah. I would like to think that there's a process there that are going to be the best decision for the current kids and not totally judged on the success of the previous 3-year group, because it can happen and it will happen.
Yeah, I mean, overall, I'm in favor of it. There are tweaks I'd like to see down the line. I think 3 years might just be like too short a window when you're looking at hockey, because, like you said, one class can push a group up. Maybe it needs to be points over 5 years or something like that. But they can always change it going forward.
It's definitely made an impact already in the sport. I mean, because you look at the Division II side of it, there's different teams ranked, there's different teams at the top, there's going to be different teams at the state tournament. So I think from that perspective, the 2 division part has worked, and opting up or having the point basis to have teams move up will continue to keep the Division II pool fluid, and just give other teams opportunities as well.
Uh, Moving to another topic, this year, Manitowoc is playing as their own team again. I believe they were part of Sheboygan's co-op last year, if I'm not mistaken. Do you know of any other teams on the horizon? The Spooner Rails are playing separate from the Northwest Icemen again. I think that started last year.
I don't off the top of my head. I'm just scrolling through our list right now, and I don't know of any that are looking to split up. But I think every year we're going to have, if we continue to have some growth in terms of teams, I think it makes the pipe dream of what state could look like as 8-4. I think the limitation of that has more to do with schedule, facility, and visibility than anything. But I love the opportunity to see our teams grow, and I think that's going to help Division II. It's going to help the Division II allows a smaller program to say, hey, we've got 20 guys here that we can split apart and make a run at Division II and feel like you have an opportunity. So I think those hopefully those continue to pop up every year.
That would be nice. I mean, I think we peaked at 93,
Mm-hmm.
93 teams, which was, 3 short of their magic number of 96, the number they used to give. My fear is that if somehow, the state got to 96 again, they'd give us 3 divisions of 32 teams each instead of an 8-4.
And we've talked about that as a coaches group, over the last 3-4 years as we transitioned to 2 divisions. I actually think that had more momentum as the 3-division world than it did the 8-4, just because the goal ultimately is to get more teams to the state tournament. And if 8-4 can't be done, but 4-4 can, I think, as a coaches association, we would say, yeah, let's do something like that, because we're getting more communities down there, we're getting more teams down there. And if the 3-division route would be it, I mean, I think certainly we'd be open to it.
I mean, there is something to be said about, having a team down at the state tournament helping build your program. Not a direct correlation, but I mean, in 2018, Everest stunned Wausau West and went down to the state tournament. And now, for the first time ever, Everest youth hockey has 4 squirt teams. Those kids probably played 4 years of 8U, and now they're squirts. So that lag time is just about lined up. Now, Everest has 4 squirt teams. They've never had 4 squirt teams before. They'll probably have 4 Pee Wee teams next year. So going to state tournament, it helps build your program.
Yeah, and I think in every community that has had success at the state tournament, you'll see that little bump, a few years down the line. I think you're totally right with the Everest bump.
I didn't see anything from the WIA. Were there any rule changes this year on the ice?
Just the required neck guards. I think that's the neck and laceration protection. That's the biggest emphasis to make sure kids have them. I thought it would be a bigger deal than it is. Because as you worry, they treat it like a broken stick. So if you're playing the game and you lose your neck protector, you have to leave the ice like you would have a broken stick. And honestly, in our game so far, we haven't seen any of it. I haven't seen anything come off. I haven't seen any issues with it. Maybe a couple reminders because sometimes they'll fall down a little bit depending on which kind you have, just to pull them up. But it's to me, it's been a non-issue in my experience. And I think, certainly the evidence is there to have the protection, and obviously it's worked up to this point, and I hope it continues to work.
And now that USA Hockey is requiring it as well, all your incoming freshmen starting next year will have already played with neck protection mandatory through at least part of their youth. The kids who are just starting now are going to have had it the whole time before they get to high school.
Yeah, I think I was talking with some of the youth families. I think there's still going to be some changes with it. I'm sure they'll go to like a HEC certification or some, I know there'll be some changes coming with it. And USA Hockey probably will be the driver of that, and it kind of trickles down a little bit from there. So I think, there'll still be some changes, but like you said, for the most part, it's going to be a non-issue because these kids will have grown up wearing them as youth hockey players. And when they get to high school, it's the same thing. No issue.
I'm still the only player in our men's group that has neck protection. It's built into my shirt, so it goes on every day.
Yeah, it would be interesting the older guys, because obviously didn't have to wear it, but you see it now in junior hockey. They got to wear them in junior hockey. You see it at the AHL, and I think it's the right thing. I think it's one of those things. If the technology exists for it, let's use it.
All right, another topic for Coach Brandt here. Everybody was quite excited when they broke ground in Green Bay on the 3,000 seat expansion to Cornerstone. Is there any possibility of moving there from Madison?
I would say yes on the possibility. I know the WIA did reach out to them in terms of just looking at timelines and events and some of that to see if it's even going to work and be feasible as a facility. Certainly, you look at the plans and the walkthroughs and the digital stuff, and it looks like it'll be a great facility, and certainly one that could host the state tournament. And when it's done, it'll be nice to have options for the state tournament. I think when we left the Alliant, I think there was the year of growth that first year at Cap Ice. And now you look at what year two was. I felt like year two was better than year one. And hopefully year three is better than year two. I just think there were some major hiccups, and I felt like the WIA and both the Cap Ice or now Legacy, 20 Ice Middleton, made the changes. I think that made it a better option. Again, I think we've been lucky with weather. That's helped because the transition is a little bit better there. The times are a little bit better. I think not being on the mainstream statewide network has helped us a little bit too, and give us some flexibility for the game times, because that was a big driver of when the game times needed to be. So I think some of that's helped, but certainly with the Green Bay sheet adding, it just adds another element, another opportunity, and obviously we want the best experience for the kids, and if that means Green Bay is it or staying at Cap Ice is it, we want to just work with the WIA on that. I appreciate the transparency that LeVar had when he was running and allowing us to be included in this process has been really nice.
Speaking of LeVar, he moved to basketball this year, which put Tom Shafransky back in charge of hockey, where he was for many, many years. And now Tom has announced his retirement. I know that the WIAA is I don't know if they've started interviewing anybody yet, but I know they had the job posting out for that position. Do the coaches have any involvement in that?
None. In fact, we had found out Tom was back in charge, and then shortly after that, he announced his retirement, and then the date came out because it's actually relatively soon when he's retiring here. So
Mid-February.
I've had no opportunity to talk with Tom about where things are at. I last spoke to LeVar, I think midsummer prior to him not being in charge of hockey, and just with the limited changes we've had, there hasn't been a lot of need to communicate with the WIA on anything. So, obviously Tom has done a lot for hockey. He's had his critics as well. And I think him leaving there, in a month or so, or less than a month, I think he won't be involved with the state tournament. So we just got to figure some of those details out here as we get closer to the state tournament, so we can make sure that it's the event we want it to be.
All right.
Well,
Did you have any?
one other thing regarding the Green Bay situation, Dan Bauer, who's not with us tonight, he had sent an email with a bunch of questions for Tom, and one of them was about the Green Bay thing. And in Tom's reply, he had said that the WIA had signed a long-term agreement with Cap Ice.
Yeah, I saw that in the article. I did not follow up with anyone within the WIA, just kind of let that marinate a little bit, and certainly some we can talk about. But we have no, like, as a coach association, we can just give what we would like to see, and ultimately they're going to make the decisions that they make. And up to this point, they've been super inclusive in this process for the state tournament venue, and I don't see that changing in the future. So hopefully it's just an open book, and we can talk about things as we see.
Moving on from coaches association stuff to Wausau West stuff. It seems like over the last couple weeks, your team has turned a corner. You opened the season 3-2 overtime loss to Eau Claire Memorial. A couple weeks later, 5-3 loss to University School, 4-3 loss to Point. Just 2-1, I think, which was surprising to some people over Mosinee in the Marathon Cup. 5-2 loss to Springs, but then you come back and beat Notre Dame, you beat Verona, you beat Eau Claire Memorial, you beat Middleton, you beat Chippewa Falls. A nice run of wins there against quality competition. What started to click for your team?
Well, much time you got? I think as I told you before we recorded, as a coach, sometimes obviously you want to win every game, and you coach to win every game, and the kids play to win every game, but at times you're not going to. And I think the loss to Springs in Green Bay was a really good reset for us, because we had been playing really well just prior to the holiday there, and then the holiday happened, we come back, and the guys and coaches didn't feel like we played well. Part of that was us, and part of that was what Springs did to us. And we had a pretty open and honest film session the next morning, and it was the players talking, it was the coaches talking, it was quizzing, it was showing good, it was showing bad. And from that moment, I just felt like there was an accountability piece for us that obviously as coaches, we want to hold them accountable, but the players holding each other accountable, and more importantly, holding themselves accountable individually. And from that moment, I felt like it was a little bit of a corner for us, where it was, all right, we understand what the expectation is now. And we've had some good leadership in the locker room. And as a coach, like, you want to control everything, but sometimes you got to give up control. And as a coach, I've given up control of a couple things that I was a little bit uncomfortable with, and giving the players control on things. And I think when it's driven from those guys, I think there's a different accountability piece for themselves, and hopefully that's something that they recognize, But it's certainly something we talk about as coaches because we have played really well here in the last 2-3 weeks.
And it doesn't get much easier for you the next couple of weeks. You've got Eau Claire North. You got Spash again on Thursday. Your game against North, I believe, has been rescheduled already.
Mhm.
You've got New Richmond coming up next Saturday. That's I mean, they were D2 last year, but they're doing just fine in D1 this year. And then, you got some more conference games, and then you finish out your regular season schedule with Nina, who's currently ranked fourth, I believe. So you guys are going to have a nice run here to end the season.
Yeah, I mean, you look at the schedule, it's nice to have meaningful games the second half. Obviously, as we're recording, we're not going to play on Tuesday at Eau Claire North. That's been rescheduled for January 30th. So the next game is Spash at Spash, and I think that's a meaningful game for us. It's a meaningful game for them. We had a really good game against them, and the first time we played at Marathon Park, and hopefully that's something our guys can learn from and give them an opportunity, give themselves an opportunity to play well against Spash. Certainly, they're playing really well too. I mean, they're double-digit goals in each of the last 3 of the last 4, something like that. I mean, they've been able to certainly score a lot, and hopefully we can play well against them. And then you look at, you named it. I mean, we've got New Richmond, we've got Nina, you've got Everest, you've got some meaningful conference games in there to finish up the conference season and hopefully prepare to play well in February. I say to our guys a lot, we've got a 24 game preseason, and what you do there determines where you fit in the seeding and all those things, which by the way, from the Coaches Association thing, I hope we continue the coaches seed the section, because I feel like our groups, as whether it's D2, D1, we get things right. I feel like we do a really good job of discussing and being prepared for the meeting. I don't ever want to go to a computer system just because I don't think it takes into account head to head as much as it should. You look at basketball rankings, their sectional rankings, the football sectional rankings. I don't think it carries enough weight. And I think as coaches, we do our homework well.
BJ, you're talking about the sectionals, right?
Yeah, sectional rankings,
Okay.
and even the state tournament. I mean, the coaches get the opportunity to rank the state tournament. It's not done by a computer; it's done by humans. And I think this is a process that I hope we can continue to do, because I think coaches do a great job of doing homework and building their schedule right. Where, quite honestly, you go into the meeting and it's a lot of head-to-head talk, and that's where, when you look at our sectional, we try to play everyone in the sectional that we can, and that way when you go into the seeding meeting, you fall where you fall, and that 24 game preseason sets you up for what you hopefully want to do come in February.
When you're Spash sitting at 16-0, does the thought of running the table start creeping into your players' heads?
Well, that'd be interesting. As a coach, no, because just last week somebody told me how many games we had won in a row, and I didn't know that, because I was like, just you move on to the next game and you're preparing for the next opponent. You try to get the kids to kind of have that next game mentality and who we're playing. I don't know. You'd have to ask Schwang or Corey, some of the guys that have done it, to see when that does creep in. My guess is it wouldn't, because you just try to keep the kids focused on the next game and trying to go 1-0 that day, and the details and the habits needed to win a game.
I'm sure the coaches aren't thinking about it, but I mean, high school kids aren't always the most rational people.
If it's on TikTok, maybe it would be.
All right. Any other questions for Coach Brandt?
Coach, looking at the sectional this year, holy smokes, that's going to be a knockdown drag out.
Yeah, I mean, since we've gone to 2 divisions, I think it's been a battle. You look at seeds I mean, you look at the top seeds and anybody can beat anybody. You know, right now, obviously, I think, you know, in our sectional, Spash and Hudson have done some damage there to where, but after that, I think it's a little bit of a toss up to see where teams seated, and these next couple weeks will hopefully give a clearer picture or muddy the picture. I mean, that's what could happen too, is it gets all muddy, and then you got to go through and do your homework as a coach and make a good argument to why you think you should be where you're at. I think I as much as you want an easy road to state, I don't know that it prepares you for state. You know, all the teams that get there, they've had to go through it. They and you want to be able to know that you're playing your best hockey. And if you get through your sectional, especially our sectional, I know that we'll have played the best hockey we can.
Hudson is kind of an enigma this year because their Saturday game against Notre Dame last week was postponed. But other than their first two games of the season, Edgewood and Verona, their entire non-conference schedule this year appears to be in Minnesota. The rest of their schedule is just Big Rivers play. So it's kind of hard to get a gauge on them.
I agree. I think the Notre Dame game was one that I was looking forward to see how that went, just because we've played them and a lot of teams have played Notre Dame. And hopefully that's one that gets made up, because with the lack, like from the Valley perspective, with West and Spash and Everest and Rapids and those teams, you look at how there's limited comparables, even other than when we go over to the Big Rivers and play those. So that'll be one that'll be an interesting conversation during the seeding process. Just
I take it back. They have one more. They have Bayport on Saturday, February 1st. So of Hudson's non-conference schedule, they have 4 games against Wisconsin teams, and the rest are in Minnesota.
And that's new. I mean, that's new this year. I think they've removed a couple teams to schedule some more Minnesota teams.
Well, I mean,
Yes,
most of the
we were actually chided a few years back when Davis Drewiski was the coach, saying how, you know, because we had said that we never get a chance to see Hudson because they don't come over here at all, and you know, he at the time he explained the 3 times they had, you know, come over this way that season, and you know, so we had to kind of lay off that for a while, but now they certainly have gone back the other direction, being west.
but I mean, if you look at it, Egan, Minneapolis, Gentry Academy, Holy Angels, I mean, they're not a long drive from Hudson. And most of the schools that are right around Hudson are all Division 2. You're looking at like Somerset and Amory and Baldwin Woodville and Menominee, and those Menominee's a conference opponent, but everybody's Division 2. So I mean, it's not like it doesn't make sense. Same reason Superior, you know, played Minnesota teams all the time. That's who was around them.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Well, I mean, Superior was actually in a, you know, conference up there. They're listed as independent here, but they were in a conference up there that was all Minnesota teams because, you know, there weren't any Wisconsin teams close to them.
And there still aren't many that are close to them.
No,
So I think
I mean, I've been told that Superior puts in to have the sectional final at Westman Arena every year and gets declined because nobody wants to go there.
I think it's set up this year for up there. I feel like they might have won.
I mean, there were a couple sectional finals scheduled in the last few years where the sectional final got down to West and Spash, and the sectional final was supposed to be in Eagle River, and both times it got moved. Those were, I think, the last couple of years before the switch to 2 divisions. Because you know, sometimes you just got to make the travel make sense.
And I think the WIAA does a good job of that, and the host schools do a good job of that too. Let's see. I'm just pulling up the WIAA. Yeah, right now it is Westman Arena, Saturday, March 1st at 3 p.m. for our scheduled sectional final. So as of now, that's where we're all going.
That's a long drive for you.
It is. It's one we'd be willing to make. And quite honestly, I've never been in Westman Arena. I've only been in the Saha rink there. I've never been in the UW Superior rink. So I'd love to see it.
I've been saying for years I would love to get a sectional final in Hunt Arena at UW River Falls. That's a very nice arena.
Yeah, we looked at that when we were looking at state tournament venues. We were looking at that because I love the bowl aspect of it. It's, you know, it's not a super deep bowl in terms of having a ton of seats, but the atmosphere that can be created there just seems like it would suit very well to a sectional final environment for sure.
All right. I think that's it for Coach Brandt, unless you two have anything else.
BJ, I think it's probably past your bedtime, isn't it?
You know, I'm at school right now
I
because
see that.
I didn't want to have you guys have to deal with the two barking dogs, the kids that, they play video games and they have fun, but it isn't always fun while they're playing video games. So I just wanted to make sure we had a nice, quiet environment so we could actually have a meaningful conversation.
I
All
thought
right, well,
maybe that
thank
was
you.
your coach's office there.
No, this is my classroom. I spent we had development day. We were here. I was here most of all day today in terms of school hours. So this is my seat, my captain's chair for most of today, and I was happy to come back as it is. It's nice and quiet and nice place to have a chat.
Yeah, I had parent-teacher conferences in Everest today, and my son's teacher this year is Jacques Duvert, and we did it. He did our parent-teacher conference from home. We did that over WebEx. He didn't want to go into the school today; it was too cold.
Yeah, we had the option to stay home. Like they said we could stay home, and there wasn't many cars in the parking lot. I for one, for the same reasons that I'm not at home doing this conversation, work much better here.
What do you teach?
I teach graphic arts and
Okay.
welding or first semester. And then I'm all graphics, Graphicom 1, 2, and 3. So it's like your Adobe Design Suite, your Photoshop, Illustrator, InDesign are the three that we mainly focus on.
Do you
Okay.
have your students design the senior banners that hang at the end of the rink?
So what's interesting is the Graphics 3 course does a lot of design jobs for people, and they're the group that will get asked to do that stuff. They did not do this year's, but it's something that I want them to get into because it's such a niche for them, and I have a lot of student athletes and kids are involved in different clubs and activities, and it's an easy way, meaningful way for them to do projects.
All right.
All right.
We'll let you go now. You can finally go home and enjoy the kids loudly playing video games.
That's right. Thanks, guys. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay.
See
Thanks,
ya.
BJ.
All right.
Brian Brandt, the head coach, Wausau West Warriors, getting back on the radar screen. One of the top teams in the state. Guys, let's head out and let's take a look here. What else we got going on? Let's scroll down here. Games of the week. Dan had Beaver Dam at Badger Lightning. Dan's not with us tonight. Junior will accept the award in his name.
Beaver Dam won 4-1. You can read about it on the site.
Bill Jr. also, we chatted a little bit before we started recording this about the game he went and saw on Saturday. USM and Spash, and sounds like you were a little bit surprised by that one.
Yes, I was surprised by that one in that despite the fact it took Spash 7 minutes and 21 seconds to score their first goal, I never really felt like USM had a chance in this one. I was shocked. They came out a little flat, and Spash came out absolutely fired up and just buried the puck in the university school zone for the majority of the game. As I said, They picked up their first goal at 7:21 of the first period after just a string of dominant play. Grant Molsky from Grady Miller. And then it looked like things might finally tip USM's direction. Spash took a roughing penalty for protecting their goalie a little too forcefully. They managed to kill that one off, but then is just a few seconds after that penalty ended, they took a tripping penalty. So USM got back-to-back penalties, and you're like, all right, things are tipping in their favor. And on that second penalty, Spash scored 2 shorthanded goals in the span of 30 seconds. On the first, Jackson Schrader managed to block a shot with his stick and then pounce on the puck just behind the defenseman, race down the ice, make a move on the goalie and put it in. And on the second, Beckett Carroll, Spash plays a very aggressive penalty kill, and there was a D-to-D pass for USM and just a little bobble by the defenseman, and Beckett Carroll pounced on it and ended up going a 2-on-1 the other way, hit Jackson Spies in the middle of the ice, made it 2-1 or 3-0, 2 goals in 30 seconds, both shorthanded. Jerome Poirier added a 4th goal with a minute 27 or a minute 37 left in the first period to make it 4-0 after 1. Shots in the first period were 15-5, and of USM's 5 shots in the first period, I know for sure 2 of them were dump-ins. So it was very one-sided period. It continued that way in the second. Spash scored 2 more shorthanded goals, once again on the same penalty kill. In the second period, 2 other goals to make it 8-0 after 2. They added 2 more in the third before USM finally got on the board at 10:40 of the third period to make it 10-1. As I said, I've never seen a game between 2 ranked teams enter running time 30 seconds after the midway point of the game. 8:30 of the second period is the halfway point of a high school hockey game, and at 9 minutes of the second period, the game was in running time. It was an interesting one to watch. You're on mute, MJ.
I've seen running time start at the beginning of second periods, but
For the number 5 team in the
yeah,
state?
for two ranked teams, I mean, yeah, that would be a little bit surprising.
Yeah, it was something. I mean, despite the score, I'm sure the university fans didn't I thought it was actually a really fun game to watch because it was the first time I've been able to see Spash in person this year. I've seen Live Barn and I've seen them on one of the streaming sites that's up here, but seeing them in person, their top 6 forwards, Grant Molsky, Grady Miller, Jackson Schrader, Jackson Spies, Maxim Salienko, and Carson Summers, can play in any combination of 2 lines. And they do throughout the game. They're constantly changing up who's on the ice together. And it doesn't matter which of those 3 is on the ice, they're fantastic. It's just a really, really strong hockey team. And I asked BJ about when, do the players, get it in their heads about running the table because they're 16-0, and I'm like, watching, like, this team could do it. I mean, they've had some 1-goal games, some close games, but man, they're just scary good. Grady Miller, I believe he's only a sophomore, might be the best stick handler I've seen in years.
I think he's a junior.
I think he's a junior, yeah.
Mason had the chance to see Spash earlier this year, and Junior, he's pretty much been saying the same things that you're saying. I mean, they can just go so many different ways and still be so good.
The thing that you don't get on Live Barn or a streaming service is just how fast they are. I mean, they get the puck in your zone and they keep it in your zone because they get to the loose puck first. They get it out of their own zone because you dump it in and they get to the loose pucks first. They're just faster than everybody else.
USM only took 1 penalty in the game, which is a credit to USM because we've all seen 10-something games where the team that's on the wrong end of that has a parade to the penalty box. And USM, they had 1 penalty in the first period, and I hated Spash's power play on that. I thought the whole time they were trying to be too cute Whereas for the rest of the game, they were just going to the net. They were throwing pucks at the net and jumping on rebounds. They were making passes to the front of the net, whether or not they had somebody there to catch them, because they just assumed one of their teammates would be there. They went to the net hard and fast all game, and their one power play, I thought they were just trying to be too cute. But other than that, they played a complete dominant game.
Best Western Premier Park Hotel, our players of the week. Burglar, you got one for the boys and you got one for the girls. And who we looking at?
That's generally how we do it. MJ would do the girls. Well, normally Dan does the girls because he's more up to date on all that stuff. But this time we have from the Central Wisconsin Storm, Gabby. Is it Hauser or Heuser?
I believe Dan said Heuser when he was here last week.
Okay, we'll go with Gabby Heuser, if that's what Dan said. On Friday, she had 3 goals and an assist in a 7-1 win over Beaver Dam. And on Saturday, she had 2 goals and an assist in a 5-2 win over Lakeshore. So for that performance, Gabby Heuser, who has had well, just about every week, she was, qualifying as one of the top players in the state. Personally, I didn't vote for her this week because next week she's probably going to break the Storm career goal scoring record, and I thought that would be a good time to give her the player of the week because she's probably going to have, a hand in most of their goals next week as well. But anyway, this week she gets it. Gabby Heuser, our girls' Best Western Premier Park Hotel Player of the Week. And on the boys' side, from Antigo, it could have been either one of the dynamic duo they had in Antigo, but Owen Dickman had 1 more point than Eli Kassler. Kassler had 4 points in each of the 2 games, and Dickman had 5 in the second game. On Thursday, he had 3 goals and 1 assist in Antigo's 5-3 win over Northland Pines. And on Saturday, he had a hand in all the scoring, wasn't quite enough. 4 goals and an assist in a 6-5 loss to Marshfield. So Owen Dickman is our Best Western Premier Park Hotel Boys Player of the Week.
Speaking of scoring, I would be remiss if I did not mention that Jackson Schrader of the Spash Panthers is 3 points away from the career points mark, currently held by Cade Smigaj, who graduated in 2023. He had 220 career points. Schrader is currently sitting on 217. 85 goals, 123 assists regular season, 5 goals, 4 assists playoffs, for a total of 217 points for Jackson Schrader.
Junior, imagine if Cole Caulfield would have stayed 2 years, 2 extra years.
Yeah, but he didn't.
I bet it would have been close to 300.
He had 151 points in the 2 years he did play as a freshman and sophomore.
That's pretty good. Top 6s. Junior, you've done all the counting and all the good math stuff that I don't have in my head anymore after 60 years. Top 6s, Division 2. What did you come up with?
All right. Number 1 is still Tomahawk, but they are not unanimous this week. Back to the pattern where they're not unanimous. Number 2 this week is Somerset, moving up 1 place. They got a first place vote after their 6-0 win over Ram this week. River Falls moves up 2 spots to number 3. Ram is still number 4. McFarland drops 3 spots to number 5, and I could not figure out why. They won both their games this week. Baldwin Woodville is 6th again this week, also receiving votes for Amory and Mosinee. Somerset is coming on strong. After their overtime loss to Brookfield in their holiday tournament in Minnesota, they have moved up the rankings every week. And that 6-0 win over Ram was kind of a kind of a statement win when you're playing another top 6 ranked team and you beat them 6-0. That's pretty good.
You said McFarland dropped 3 spots, but they won both their games last week.
Yes.
Who did they play last week?
Well,
They,
I think that's been the problem for McFarland this year is that they have a fairly soft schedule, in that they don't play a lot of the upper level Division II schools. They have a couple of I mean in their conference they have a couple of Division I schools, but they really don't have much. They don't have much to point at, and say, they don't have any of those top 4 teams that are above them.
yeah, they don't. McFarland, they beat Waupun and they beat Monona Grove. McFarland's problem, as far as the rankings are concerned, is they don't have a statement win. Homestead, Stoughton, Oregon, Sauk Prairie, Milton, Beaver Dam, Avalanche Co-op, Reedsburg, Wisconsin Dells, Avalanche Co-op again, Baraboo, Portage, Waupun, and Monona Grove. I mean, it's good that they're winning those games, but they don't have a statement win yet, so they don't have one of those games that you can hang your hat on. And looking at their upcoming schedule, I don't know that they have a lot of opportunities to have one of those unless if they pull out the win over the Muskego Co-op D1 program on February 7th, that would be one, but I don't know that they have another opportunity before they get to the sectionals to hang a statement win on somebody. Moving on to the girls. Some changes this week. The Bay Area Ice Bears are still unanimous number 1. The Storm moved up to 2nd, and Superior dropped back to 3rd. Hayward moved up to 4th, and St. Croix Valley dropped back to 5th. And Western Wisconsin came into the 6th spot this week. They were not ranked last week. Also receiving votes were Black River Falls, Eau Claire area, and Lakeshore. Superior beat Hayward 3-2 recently. Not Hayward, Hudson 3-2 recently, and then the Storm beat them 6-0. And Superior had a rough loss against a Minnesota team. Those two things probably combined to move the Storm back over the Spartans at the top of the bracket. And then Hayward and St. Croix Valley have been flipping back and forth all season. So that is just
I don't think Superior would necessarily take a hit for losing to a Minnesota team, but just the margin of defeat, similar to Spash beating up on University School. Just the margin of that loss. I think it was a 10-1 loss there also. That kind of took a little bit of their shine away.
Yeah, and then the Fusion, they've been slowly making their way up the rankings. They were not ranked, then they were 6th, then they were 5th, then they were 4th, and then this last week they lost 4-1, which the way they've been playing is kind of a baffling loss to the Chippewa Falls Menominee Sabres, who are 7-8 on the season. So it's that moved the Fusion down on the girls' side. All right, and then looking at D1.
Hey, before we
Spash.
go,
Yes, sir.
before we go on, you mentioned the Muskego Co-op Ice Force, and I just brought them up here on the site, and they're one of those teams that we don't talk a whole lot about, but guys, they're having a pretty good year.
We've mentioned them a
12
couple times. They are having a good year, and
They're
it's
12 and
good to
5.
see.
They're averaging over 5.5 goals a game, holding teams to just under 3.5. They got a power play of 35%, which is good. They're
They beat
5-4 in
University School.
conference play. Yes.
Yeah, they beat University School 6-3 earlier in the season, but then they've lost to KMMO in conference both times they've played. So there's a little inconsistency there.
I just want to throw out a little bit of love for those guys.
Sure.
They're having a nice year.
They've got West Bend this year. West Bend has had a nice season. They got them this week on Saturday. Next week they got number 2 Brookfield. So have fun. All right,
Okay.
moving on to D1. Spash is still unanimous number 1. Brookfield is still 2. Hudson is still 3. And St. Mary Springs is still 4. Nina Hortonville Menasha moves up to 5th. Wausau West comes in at the 6th spot this week, also receiving votes from Madison Edgewood and University School. As we said, there's not a lot of shame in losing to the number 1 team in the state, as University School did, but the margin, 10-1, that's going to turn some heads when it comes to voting for the rankings. And we mentioned earlier, University School actually beat Wausau West earlier in the season, but that's my fault. I mean, I was at the game, and Wausau West doesn't win when I'm there. They dug themselves a 3-0 hole in the first period. I thought West outplayed University School in the second period, even though University School outscored them 2-0. And then West outplayed them again in the third period, outscoring them 3-0. So I believe that game ended up 5-3 in favor of U School. But they're another one that they're just, I think Coach McGuire said it in the comments I have on the article. Their efforts just not always consistent. And that's one of the things that they need to work on if they want to stay in the top 6 and be challenged for their section again. I mean, they are still the front runner. Now, Brookfield is the front runner in that section, but University School still has a shot.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Looking here at the Division One, you look at Spash, you see Hudson, you see Wausau West, and correct me if I'm wrong, but you got 3 teams here that are all in the same sectional, correct?
Yes, and I believe Springs and Nina are in the same sectional as well. But I'm not
And then you're
entirely certain. I'm not looking at it right now.
okay. Okay, that's just another season of that's just going to be a dogfight getting out of that sectional.
Wouldn't
Yeah.
Springs, Nina, and Brookfield all be in the same section?
No. Springs, Nina, and Notre Dame are all in the same section, section 2.
Okay.
Section 4, you've got your Brookfield, you've got your University School, the Muskego Co-op, as MJ mentioned. KMMO is in that one. So that one's section 4. In the past, when it was all one division, Springs moved around a couple times, but I think they went south, not north, when it came to sectional time. But now with the way the breakdown is, they go north, not south.
Right, and at that point, I think it was also USM went north also.
Well,
Yeah.
University Schools in Milwaukee, the only direction to go is north.
Well, they could go into the lake, but I guess that
I mean, they could go down to Chicago if they wanted. You're not going to win anything down there.
no. Okay. Upcoming games of the week. Wednesday, Arrowhead at University School.
Dan will be at
Saturday,
that one for our girls' game.
That's our girls' game, okay. And then Saturday, St. Mary Springs, the boys, they go up to the Tommy Hawk.
Yes, I will be at that one. I have not been to Sarah Park since I played there as a child. So, since Burglar's on the IR, I'm making the trip.
Since you were a child, that's a lot of years ago.
Yes. And we didn't go up to Tomahawk every year. So I can't even say how long it's been since I've been there. I could have been a peewee for all I remember.
Okay.
That'd be 30 years.
Oh boy. Anything else you guys want to touch on here? I see we kind of run out of note stuff here.
That's all I got.
Um,
I think Springs and Tomahawk is going to be an interesting matchup. Tomahawk played the other school that just moved up. Tomahawk went up to New Richmond a couple weeks ago, and I think they lost 4-3 or something like that. So Tomahawk is keeping their schedule loaded because they do recognize that they have a special group of kids coming up, and I do think it would be a shame if they do, if they end up getting moved up, through competitive balance as, being the second smallest school in the state fielding a hockey team. That they
Smallest
would
public school.
Huh?
And the smallest public school.
Yeah, the smallest public school, getting moved up because they had a special group of kids come through. But it's a chance. I mean, their leader, Austin Lamer, he's a senior. But number 7, his name escapes me. He's a junior, and the Jet Riley is just a freshman. So Tomahawk, yeah, they've got a couple years left where they can be pretty good. I just hate to see them get moved up.
Number 7 is Jonah Dickens.
Yes, and he is fast.
He is in a straight line. I think he's as fast as anybody. I said that last year. He doesn't have like Grady Miller of Spash's moves, but in a straight line, he can go around just about anybody. He's crazy fast. 28 goals, 9 assists. Share the puck, Jonah. But he's a junior, and yeah, Jet Riley is a freshman. He's got 12 goals and 28 assists. So he's feeding Jonah. And then yeah, Austin Lamer, he's a defenseman with 30 points.
Yeah, they got a good team. Our second time there for a game of the week. I think you should take Brett again. They have a raised platform on the north end of the rink that you got to go up a ladder to get to. Brett does well going up there. He can take pictures from the whole ice from up there, and then you can just mingle about. When I was there, they had me go on with their radio crew. I don't know if they'll have you do that or not, but
I like taking Brett to games with me because I don't like watching hockey games through a camera lens. It's a lot more fun. It's a lot more fun, and you get a better view of the game when you're not staring down the barrel of a camera. So if I can bring a cameraman, I will.
Absolutely.
I'm sure he'll go with you.
Absolutely. Guys, Holy Baker Award, a reminder to the coaches to make sure they get somebody submitted, correct?
Yes.
Oh, yeah, I should refresh that on our site too.
Okay. Okay. If you guys don't have anything else to say, I'd just like to throw this quick at you guys. This is off of hockey, but last week Bob Uecker passed, and knowing you two are big Brewer fans, and I am as well, it was kind of a sad day here in Wisconsin. I see that.
I have worn Brewers stuff every day since Bob Uecker died.
Yeah.
That was like celebrity deaths are a thing, but that one hit hard. I mean, Bob Uecker is the soundtrack to every summer of my life, and
Yeah.
it continues from my birth till now.
When he would,
like, even now, I would, if I was watching a Brewer game, I would check to see if Uke was on the radio, and if Uke was on the radio, I would mute the TV and sync the two up.
Bob just he just had a way of, he was like must hear radio when it come to baseball.
Well, I think I've listened to, like, I've subscribed to MLB TV for a long time because I don't always just watch the Brewers. I like to watch games whoever's on, and I watched, back in the day, I listened to a lot of Detroit Tigers games with Ernie Harwell, who was a legendary broadcaster. I've watched a lot of Dodgers games with Vin Scully, and I think what a lot of people outside of Wisconsin don't realize is that besides all the funny stuff that Bob Uecker is known for nationally, he was just as good at them at calling a game straight. He could, if the game was close and it needed to be called straight, he was just as good as anybody else who's out there, better than most of the people who are out there. And then when you had a game that was going sideways, then he could be, the funny Bob Uecker. Everybody. Like I remember a game the Brewers were playing the Reds several years ago, and Homer Bailey of the Reds was pitching, and Uecker went on and on and on for several innings talking about Homer Bailey's Uncle George and his savings and loan, and everything was from the movie It's a Wonderful Life, like the whole story. And it took whoever was in the booth with him, I think it was still Joe Block at the time. It took him like an inning to catch it. The Bob Uecker was just telling like a fictionalized version of already a fictional movie, It's a Wonderful Life, linking George Bailey to Homer Bailey, the Reds pitcher, and it was amazing.
Yeah, he had a way of doing games, and it was something where he just, 1971, they just threw him in there, and I don't know.
I heard
The
him
rest
tell
is
the
history.
story once that like he was in the booth doing color, and he had two guys with him at the time, and it was a road game, and they both just left and said, "You do it." And not like as just like, here, you take a shot. They just left and made him do it. He did it.
They had a thing on online talking about Al Michaels was talking about, it was him, Howard Cosell, and Uecker, and they were doing a game down in Houston, and Howard was just being his usual, spouting off about this and that, and he said something about Uecker, you're so truculent, you probably don't even know what that means. Bob says, sure it does. It's like you saying, the truck you lent me.
Like he used to do the national broadcasts with Costas, and I know he did a couple with Tim McCarver and a couple other ones with Joe Morgan. And Tim McCarver and Joe Morgan are two baseball broadcasters I have never liked. But when I was a kid, they were in the playoff broadcast with Bob Uecker. It was fine because they spent most of the broadcast laughing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he was when you see in last week on MLB Network, they were talking about, Bob Uecker passing away and all the people, putting their 2 cents in. And boy, the Milwaukee people, Brian Anderson, Lane Grindle, all those guys, they took it pretty hard. And I guess that last game when the Brewers lost to the Mets in the playoffs when Bob signed off, I guess it was a really emotional time, knowing what we know now. I mean, knowing that was it, and yeah, it was a tough one. This
Yeah, I mean,
one's
I think he only did 35 games this year.
yeah. And the thing was so many years he could have went anywhere. He could have went anywhere and did baseball, but he never wanted to leave Milwaukee. So,
I mean, how many guys can say they have two statues at the stadium? He's got one
that's a
outside
good
and
point.
he's got one outside and inside.
And the one on the inside is not in the front row.
No, it's up in the Euchre seats. Yeah, after that happened, I watched on YouTube some of his old appearances on the Tonight Show, which were, I mean, I wasn't old enough to stay up and watch the Tonight Show when Carson was still in the air. I watched some of those. I watched his Hall of Fame induction speech again,
Oh
which
my God, that
I've
was
watched that
terrific.
so many times over the years. I could probably recite the thing if I really wanted to. Best Hall of Fame induction speech ever. I mean, it starts with, I still think I should have got in as a player. The guy who hit 200 over 6 seasons with, I think, 14 home runs.
Well, one of them was off Sandy Koufax.
Yes, it was. And even though he was the backup catcher, he still managed to lead the league in errors and pass balls one season. Which is where the joke of how do you catch a knuckleball? You wait for it to stop rolling and pick it up. Because that year he was, besides being backup catcher, he was also the personal catcher for Phil Niekro. So
yeah. As Bob would say, well, the one year I think the most I made was $23,000, and a lot of that was spent by selling other players' equipment. Okay, well, yep, Bob Uecker, he was one of a kind, and boy, he will be missed. Anything else, guys?
No, but I'm glad you brought that up.
Oh, man.
Oh, are you going to tell them your prized possession now then?
I think I've mentioned it before, but I have a when I was 12, opening day of the Little League season, I threw a no hitter. Kept one of the balls from it. It says no hitter in the date written on it, and um, at the time, Dad worked for the radio station, so they had Radio Broadcasters Day because the station he worked at was part of the Brewers radio network. So
Yep,
someone
yep,
from the station got to go down to the game with their families. Um, we got to go like beneath County Stadium, and we got to meet some of the like I think it was Jose Valentin and John Jaha and some other
yep.
guys, the early '90s guys, and then we got to go out on the field. We had to stay on the warning track, but then Euchre came down and he signed my no hitter. None like we have a bat signed by Jaha and Valentin and some other stuff, but nobody touched that ball. I gave the ball to Euchre. He signed the no hitter.
He was your personal catcher. You knew the way you threw knuckleballs, so he would, just wait till it quits rolling.
So yeah, this one of all celebrity deaths, sometimes they hit you hard because of the movies you like, the TV shows you like, but this one was tough. Not having Euchre, even the possibility of Euchre on Brewers games anymore is going to be really awkward, weird. Not that I don't like Lane Grindle and Jeff Levering, even though they're the same person. It's going to be weird.
Yeah. All right, guys. That's I guess that's all we got. We've talked a lot of hockey. We even talked a little baseball. How about that?
I'm also pretty sure the Brewers are going to be bad this season.
I don't think they're going to be as bad as you think.
Well, last year they were about 15 games better than I thought they'd be, so maybe it'll even out.
Yeah. We'll see. Long ways to go yet. All right, it's time for me to go to bed, guys.
All righty.
It's past my bedtime. So for Bill Senior, Bill Junior, and Brian Brandt, thanks for joining us for tonight's show. I'm Mike Hammett. Next week we'll be right back here with another edition of This Week in Wisconsin Prep Hockey.